3 days since I recorded again. Um, I talked to my dad a little bit, but did not talk to him about my name. He does seem to be talking to me a little more easily and a little less, like, withdrawn or depressed sounding or anything like that. He sounds a lot more like himself, which is helpful. Um, I also think it helped that the whole phone call wasn't about that. I basically, told him about telling the rest of my family and about my birth mother and the shock and my big bro and the shock and blah blah blah. And and then the rest of the call was we talked about him filing his taxes and he had to weed whack and about a car and like he talked about some jokes from work buddy and stuff like that. And you know I think that helped, just having some idle chit chat or normal chit chat or however you want to say that. I'm sorry if there's a fan in the background or anything. We don't have air conditioning. It started getting warmer, so the fans are on. So hopefully you don't hear them. Um, but yeah, I think it seemed like it went somewhat better. My guild seems to be doing pretty well about it and everything. I got called Poppy last night by a guildie. That was interesting. Um, but yeah, I feel like they're all taking it quite well. Um, I've been having a little more trouble looking at myself, even though I'm supposed to be looking at myself in the mirror every couple of seconds. That I do, I immediately can't anymore, and I'm supposed to be, trying really hard to, and I'm struggling to look at the camera a lot right now for whatever reason. My spouse discussed like the last say 15ish minutes of my therapy session with my therapist. How she was feeling, and she said that it did help, and that the thing she's most upset about is me. I still haven't come out to her parents, and she's very concerned about that. Um, that I'm a dude. Um, she finds my beard triggering, so I was feeling really like happy about my little goatee. And now I felt like really somewhat guilty about it, because if I just shave it off, then she's not triggered anymore. And she's been having nightmares and stuff, and she insists that it's not that she doesn't want me to transition, um, and that she still wants me to go through with it and all, but I don't. I've never been someone who likes hurting other people, and especially when it's your spouse. Our girlfriend still seems pretty gung ho about it, pretty 100% like for it. Um, but yeah, it took me 5 days or whatever it was of coming out to everybody and stuff. And honestly, it was so draining and exhausting. I'm an introvert. I don't really like being around people a ton in the first place. And then it wasn't just socially draining, it was emotionally draining and mentally draining. And I ended up taking a nap every single day that I was doing it because I would get so exhausted. and that's with mostly positive responses. I think it would have been a little easier if it hadn't been mostly positive responses, because then the conversations would have been much shorter and I would have just shut down and closed off to the people and it would have been whatever. But this way I had to stay open and I had to stay like there and not and struggle not to like dissociate away and stuff. Like it was very long and hard. So um the day before yesterday I sort of just spent most of the day resting, and I didn't do too terrible much. Um, I did chores and stuff, and then I didn't game. I just rested, and I did emotionally regurgitate a little bit because I turned on the freaking Lion King, and that movie, like, I was obsessed with that movie when I was little. When I was a little kid, and I related so much to the movie, and I was Simba and stuff, except that I couldn't be Simba because Simba was boy lion. And my mother would always ask me, aren't you Nala, not Simba? But it was like, no, I'm Simba. Love that movie. But I also relate to that movie a lot. Like, a lot, a lot. I mean, my dad's not dead, but my mother divorced my father to marry my father's uncle, and she kidnapped us and took us with, and it almost did kill my father. And when you're little, you don't understand everything, but what I did understand was that it was my responsibility to take care of my family, and it didn't matter that I was little. I was helping raise everybody, and in my opinion, I was even helping raise my parents. Even that young, I was very aware of that we were broken or whatever, and I felt very responsible, and I wanted to stop lashing out. I wanted to start being better, and somehow watching that movie every single day after school for 2 years straight um, helped make me a better person. And I stopped, you know, beating up on my brothers as much, and I stopped being a little brat and stuff as much, and I became more like reliable, consistent. If I said I was going to do something, I did it. I I still, to this day, when I die, I want to be, turned into compost and put under a tree. I still want my body to feed the earth, and the plants, and then the animals eat the plants, and then the animals get to die, and their bodies become the plants again. There are some differences, like I did not have a Timon and Pumbaa at any point when I was growing up at all. Like, period. But, whatever. But yeah, I don't know. Somehow little me got a lot of maturity out of that movie. Um, I don't know. I'm very visual, so maybe that's part of why. It was an excellent movie. I mean, it got awards and crap. I'm not just making up that it's a good movie. Um, I I told my therapist about the coming out stuff and everything, and she was surprised that I'd done it because I've been saying I want to go slow. But also, I gave my mom the option, and she wanted to talk that very day. And if I tell my parents, then I have to tell all my siblings, and I have to tell the people who are part of my day to day life because my siblings interact with them. So I haven't told like extended relations or like, acquaintance style friends or anything that aren't in the guild, like at all. And I told her I don't think I'm ready to do that. I mean I still haven't even settled on my name. Like I would like to go back to going slow somewhat. I wasn't fully ready to come out, but I sort of got put in a position where it was necessary to come out. Um, but at the same time, it was so draining, and I've been trying to reiterate to everybody it's gonna be at least more toward the end of the year before I do crap, and that's medical. Right now, I'm still working on trying to find me and be less scared of myself. Like I still have therapy issues to finish working through before I feel like I could be a, you know, confident and happy boy or whatever. Like I don't want to take all of this with me into my new wonderful self. Like that would be shitty. That wouldn't help nothing. It's like people who are like going on vacation to get away from themselves, but then you're taking yourself with you, so then your vacation's crappy because you're just as miserable in another country as you were there. It doesn't, you know, like the only thing that's not miserable in another country is healthcare if you're physically sick, but if you're like depressed there and you go on a vacation, you're still gonna struggle with the depression. It's not gonna magically lift. Um, I think that's a really big misconception, but I don't want to do that to my body. Be like, hey, I'm in a new me, my body looks different, and still be like, yeah, but I'm so dissociated from myself, I can't even tell. Like, that won't help me none. And I realize there's people who are like, hey, let's just get it done. And hey, it would fix, some of your hormone imbalance issues if you just go ahead and get your hormones balanced. You know, my mental health's more important than my physical health at this point. I also I start I've been trying to exercise a little bit more and stuff now that I'm back, but I'm not doing it quite right, and it's a little frustrating. Um, I exercising helps me feel like I'm making progress. It helps me feel like I'm getting toward that more masculine shape that I'm desperate to be. And it, it's so hard on me, the long distance traveling and stuff. It throws off everything and stuff, but at the same time, I mean, right now we're us three, we're pretty much living together because we're together all the time because coronavirus has made it so that we can be. and that's awesome and wonderful. And our girlfriend's making bread every day, and like, that's awesome. And she's here, and we can cuddle, and we can do other physical things. That's awesome. I mean, just the dynamic of the three of us being around each other, everyone's so much less depressed. We don't fight almost at all, period. And we used to fight decently often just because everyone was in pain because it was long distance. And now it's not long distance, except that we have to go travel long distance so that, she can go pick up her mail and check packages and check, get her medication and, check on her place and so on and so forth. And that's hard on me. Not even just not getting to exercise, but like my leg cramps up because we don't have um, cruise control. And my body gets really stiff and everything from the drive, and then I get worn out. And I wanted us to all be together years ago, and I don't like thinking about what could have been. I don't like thinking about how hard I begged and planned and pleaded and did the math, and none of it mattered. I don't like thinking about any of that. But when you're long distance driving, your brain kind of just wanders. I don't know. I've just been very drained. I I'm really glad that everyone's trying to recognize me as a guy. I'm really glad that everyone was not surprised that I was a guy, and they were all like, "Oh yeah, you know, like obviously you're a dude," kind of an attitude about it. Like, I'm grateful for all of that. But I'm not like magically floating on like cloud nine just because some of that went better than it could have, despite the fact that I am grateful. And I'm not magically an extrovert who loved all of the hours upon hours I spent being social with people. And I don't know, I guess I'm sort of recovering or something. I don't really know. Yesterday I was like, okay, the expansion for Greymoor is coming out. I'm excited. I'm gonna do a whole bunch on ESO, and I was all gung ho about it. And I had started doing it, and I took a little break because we were gonna eat. And I was like, all right, we're gonna go make some food and come back. And the person who's supposed to lead the casual raid in our guild just didn't show up, and literally messaged us 4 minutes before raid time. And I wasn't supposed to have to raid that night because I raid lead the progression raid team. And I was like, I cannot lead this. So, another officer and my special needs spouse and girlfriend all got together and tried to lead it together. And I still had to help a little bit because the other tank had never tanked it before, which is fine. It's the casual raid. It's literally for people who are just getting into raiding, or people who want to raid but they don't want to do progression content, or like our guild on World of Warcraft is very, everyone's invited, everyone's included. Um, if we have to help carry a few people, that's completely and totally fine. We like helping people. We treat others well. It's based on those kinds of values. Like my special needs spouse is the guild leader, um, and she is a sweetheart, and she is more of a social butterfly, and she is genuine, and she believes that every guildie should get guild repair money, and every guildie should get help. And if they can't afford to bring their own potions to raid, then we'll give them some potions so that they can raid too. And it works. We have a fully active guild when a lot of guilds are like dying and crap on World of Warcraft. But I wanted to play ESO. And I wanted to get away from all of the guild stuff and all of the people, and I just wanted to have some time to just I'm socialed out apparently. I just want to I don't know. I'm just drained. So I'm not exercising fully right because I can't get up the energy to fully exercise right. Like I was exercising like 40 minutes an hour every time, and the last like 4 times I've been exercising, 5 times I've been exercising, whatever it is. It's been like, oh, here's 20 minutes. Oh, here's half an hour. It's like my time is cut in half, and I don't like that. I don't want that. I don't want to lose any progress I've made with my muscle. I I'm struggling. I will say, for Mother's Day, my spouse's mom got Disney Plus, and of course she wanted to share it with her children. Who one of her children got her the Disney Plus, so that's been awesome. And I know Disney's this big evil corporation that buys everything and shouldn't be adored or whatever, but at the same time, it's like my entire growing upness, for the most part. I mean, obviously, I grew up with some other things like Rainbow Bright and Fraggle Rock. There was, like those movies that were not done by Disney, like Thumbelina and The Rats of Nim, and, you know, those movies. I don't know who made them. I don't remember who made all those movies. Anyway, like Disney Plus has like The Princess Bride and Willow on it, but what about Labyrinth or The Dark Crystal? Like, so it doesn't have my entire childhood on it, but it has a freaking ton of my childhood on it. I remember getting home from school for 2 years. We would get home from school, and if we got home fast enough, we could watch Chip 'n Dale Rescue Ranger. But if we didn't, then it started with Tailspin, and we got to watch Tailspin, Darkwing Duck, and DuckTales, and then Saved by the Bell. And that was like such a big deal because we would get home, we would watch all of that, and then we'd do our homework, and then we could play video games. Or else run outside and go escape into the woods. But, like my mother, for whatever reason, when we would get home from school, she would be busy doing something and she didn't really want to be interrupted. So, a good way to keep herself from being interrupted and to keep us contented or whatever, like, we didn't get to watch very much TV when we were little. Like, honestly, we never even owned a TV till I was 5. We grew up really poor. But when I was like 8 and 9, we got to do that for a couple of years, and that was really like a big deal. And like those shows are on this, or like when I was helping raise my niece, she was super into like all of the Sweet Life of Zach and Cody and the like Kim Possible and all that kind of stuff. And so I would watch it with her, because I was trying to help take care of her and, make her feel, even as she was growing up, that she was supported and whatever, you know. It's so funny. She made me watch High School Musical. Oh my gosh, it's on there. And it's so terrible. Oh my gosh, it's so bad. So, whatever. Disney is evil. But, I mean, I watched the old 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and Swiss Family Robinson. Like, those movies were like such a big deal when I was a kid. Like, we watched them, and especially Swiss Family Robinson, the one from I think 1960 with the color, not the non-color one, the color, but the older one. That movie, like, I learned how to be clever, how to. I started building hardcore forts that looked like little cabins and stuff after that movie because I started being more like adventurous and stuff with my building of things and my creating and the ingenuity and all the animals and catching pets. I started catching all kinds of animals. Oh my gosh. I I got in so much trouble for some of the animals I would catch and bring back. I think the worst was the mouse because the mouse got loose in my room and I was a little too old to be that dumb, but I still caught a mouse and it was loose in my room, and we pulled apart my whole room looking for that mouse because it couldn't get out because my door was to my carpet like this where it's kind of scraped on it, so like there was no space under the bottom of my door because it was kind of hard to open my door. We pulled apart everything. My mom just so upset, like, how could you be this dumb? You can't bring a mouse in here. I had it in a little plastic container. Turns out mice can chew through the plastic. Anyway, no, the mouse was sitting on. I had a string of lights going around my closet, and it was sitting on the string of lights, just watching us tear the room apart. And I finally realized, oh, there it is. And she was like, ah, get it! And she made me get rid of it and take it. I had to walk 3 miles away and drop it off in a field. And I was so sad. It didn't actually have to go that far. She said a mile, but I went 3 because I was so sad and I was saying goodbye to it. I named it Chocolate Truffle. And because when it would curl up, it looked like a little chocolate truffle. Anyway, I would catch frogs. I would catch, and then to feed the frogs, I would go out and catch bugs. And so my room was always full of bugs because half the bugs would crawl out of the cage that I had the frogs in. So then I caught all kinds of creatures, snakes, everything. Like, I would take stray cats or things like that, and my parents had to get to the point where they were like, stop feeding the animals, they'll never stop coming back, don't feed them. Yeah, that was su- such good memories from my childhood, though. I was always climbing trees and in the woods and scraping the ends of a good solid stick to become a spear and playing adventure out in the woods and stuff. I, I, I was so inspired by the Swiss Family Robinson movie that, like, from then on, no matter what, if my Barbies were, I had to play with them, they were on a deserted island and they had to start being inventive and creating things. Like, love that movie. So, yeah, every day I'm trying to watch at least one movie, on Disney Plus. Turn something on, you know, to watch. I was turning on This Alaska thing while I was exercising because, that's where I was born and it's very nostalgic for me to see all the evergreens and the mountains and you know, Alaska's dotted with like over 1,000 lakes and just like, that's also very inspiring to me. I feel like I was a much more inspired person when I was a child than I am now. I've been trying to tap into that. I don't remember dissociating all the time. I only remember dissociating when I was around, abusive stuff. Um, I remember running away into the woods and staying there like all day and living off of whatever you could forage and stuff, until you thought it was safe to go back, or, sometimes you didn't feel it was safe to go back until a long time. I would run out even if there was snow on the ground, and then I would lay my coat down and I would lay my head on one sleeve and I'd curl up my body in my little fetal position and stick my feet in the other sleeve. And I would sleep on my coat like that in the snow because I was creative, I was inventive. And I'd pull the hood up over my shoulder, the hood of my coat. Well, it didn't go quite over my shoulder, it went like to here. But yeah. I don't know, for whatever reason, I've been thinking a lot about when I was a kid, reflecting on my life or whatever. I usually don't do that. I always say I've lived a very long life for my short little lifetime. I separate my life into three lifetimes, three separate parts. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna end up with a fourth part once I transition, aren't I? Anyway, you know, the point, the point is that helps me separate myself from that, all that abuse that little kid had and all the things that little kid experienced, the good and the bad, were a lifetime ago, you know. Like, my previous life is like this buffer between them. And then my previous life was, a lot of struggle, a lot of hardship as well. A lot of trying to figure out how to be a good lesbian and wondering why no one could want me. What was wrong with me? What was I doing wrong? I I agree with my birth mother, which doesn't happen often. I do wish that I had discovered that being able to transition was even a thing. It would have been transsexual at that point. It wouldn't have been transgender. The word transgender is actually decently new. But I would have been a lot happier, even if no one else would have accepted it as easily. I would have been so much happier. I might not have needed to separate my life into so many lifetimes. The lifetime I'm currently in basically for me started when I met my spouse. And then there's the life that was before that, my previous life, and then there's the original lifetime. And I think I've done myself slightly a disservice in pushing all of that away, and I don't regret doing that. I mean, obviously I needed to get through things, you know. A person can't constantly be aware of trauma and expect to be able to work through trauma. It's too graphic. But I might have come to realize I was a boy sooner if I had stayed tapped into all my little child self, because my little child self, even my teenager self, which I try very hard not to ever be aware of my teenager self, but especially my younger teens, I at the same time, it's like because I shoved all that away, I've struggled a lot longer. I've had to wait till my 30s to do anything about all of my little boy self. And I mean, looking back at myself, it's really, really obvious. I just shoved it all away so hard. And it's not that I forgot, it's just that I didn't dwell on it. I associate my childhood and my teenagehood with very specific things. And those things are not pleasant at all. A lot of the things. But it wasn't all bad. It was also me, like, discovering me. I was a clever little kid. I was a precocious little kid. It's strange that I'm such a tiptoe around people kind of person, because I remember being fearless. I mean, I was afraid in abusive situations, but outside of abusive situations, I was a freaking hero. Like, I was badass. And the thing is I used to make fun of my child self because I thought I was so cool. But I actually was a pretty cool kid. Now, when I was a teenager, some stuff happened when I was 9, and, you know, I mean, things started to get more fearful the more it was I think my mother just taking us really impacted me, and watching my father be in fear of never being able to see us and stuff, and my mother power tripping and realizing that she could get away with whatever she wanted, that knocked some fear into me real hard. I was never comfortable around her husband. Um, and even though he is a pedophile, he didn't act on those impulses until I was a teenager. He didn't start whatever. But I guess I grieve a little bit for that kid, because despite the unfortunate aspects of my childhood, that kid somehow wasn't as damaged as you would think that kid would be. Because that kid was still so brave and strong and fun and loved to run. Oh my gosh. Loved to be outside and climbing and adventuring. I think that's why I like video games, is because I get to go on adventures and I get to go run in the woods and I get to go, especially on like games like ESO, or where you actually feel like you're in the woods, when you're running around sometimes. There's a couple of environments in ESO that remind me a little of areas from when I was a kid, and I really like going there. Like like one of my favorite zones is Orsinium, Rothgar. I I like the way the snow fades into the brown grass and the brown grass fades into the green and stuff, and it's like seasons in Alaska, and there's still evergreens everywhere. And the watery areas feel like, you know, like I'm just along the water of a lake, and sun shafts come through the evergreens, and I can almost smell the woods. Everybody else is just there for farming Briarheart gear, but I don't know. I get something out of that. I miss being outside more. I feel like somewhere between when I was a kid and now, people as a whole stopped going outside as much. Especially here on the East Coast. Oh my gosh. No one goes outside to play, like, almost at all. At least in the West Coast, on the weekend, people would go out to the lake or go out hiking or whatever. Here, they don't do nothing like that. It's just not a thing that people do here that I have found. Um, I miss going outside and there being a mountain range in the horizon. I miss the evergreens. I miss the evergreens a lot. I miss being right next to the water. In Washington State, I lived 15 minutes from the Puget Sound. And I could see the Olympic Range in one direction and the Rockies in the other. In Alaska, oh my gosh, you'd go into Anchorage and it'd feel like all the mountains were just coming around to hug you, like to greet you and pull you in warmly. And at night, we'd leave driving in the dark and you could see the northern lights up in the sky. I miss the mountains. I miss that swampy area with all the like stunted trees. And there's this one little gas station. I miss Exit Glacier. I miss Homer, Alaska. And going halibut fishing and seeing the whales and seeing the sea otters. The sea otters, all just so many sea otters. And the birds. And going to the little isle, Soldovia or whatever it is, just to get hot chocolate. And then riding your boat back. I miss watching my grandmother cut perfect fillets of halibut with like the greatest of ease. Like she just I I mean, there are chefs in kitchens who could learn knife skills from my grandmother. Like she makes it look just smooth as butter. There's no strain, there's no effort regarded, and she gets the entire fillet without having to even hardly look. She's so practiced at it. I miss the smell of the fish and the ocean and the trees, or going in the river and just taking a big net and catching a bunch of hooligan, or the salmon runs, or the moose. Just being out at a lake and watching the moose go out to chew on the seaweed grass stuff down at the bottom, and the water dripping down off of them. And they'd come around all the time. Moose never ever were threatened by my presence. I remember when I was a kid, moose coming real close to me. One time, I remember a mama and her baby just kind of walking up and eating cranberries with me in the woods. Like, could have reached out and touched it if I had been, the kind of kid that would chase off an animal, but I wasn't. I was the kind of kid who liked being around animals. So I knew better than to try to pet that baby and make them scared of me. They were like 4 foot away from me. I always had that way. I was always that way. I want to be that way again. I want to be the kind of man who's that way. I've spent way too much of my life avoiding myself and trying to force myself into boxes that made other people comfortable, and way too little time spending time with myself and the person that I actually always wanted to be. And I have some qualities that I always wanted. I do like helping people, and I, am a leader. I am, whether I choose to be or not, I just sort of naturally am, and that's fine. I'm responsible, and I do follow through when I say something. Like I love very deeply when I love, and things can roll off my back really easily. I'm good in a crisis situation, level headed or whatever. But that kid was a lot smarter than me in some ways. Very wise child. Don't know how that happened. Just sitting up in trees, hugging onto the trunk and listening, squeezing wisdom out of them, listening to the wind blow through the branches, trying to make out the whispers of the ancient old tree and all it's seeing.